Hello, welcome to the December 2011 video edition of the Iowa General Fund Monthly Revenue Memo. I'm Jeff Robinson, Senior Fiscal Analyst for the Iowa Legislative Services Agency, the nonpartisan support agency of the Iowa Legislature. This video will cover the first 6 months of cash fiscal year 2012, and I will also discuss trends in Iowa and U.S. wage and salary growth over the past 20 years. Iowa net general fund revenue, unadjusted, increased a substantial 13.5% in December when compared to December 2010. The month of December was quite unusual. First, not only was the $591 million in gross deposits a record December, the dollar growth amount was a record December, and with 11.5% growth, gross receipts grew faster this December than any December since at least 1998. What makes the month's revenue even more exceptional is that more than one-half of the growth in December occurred in the final 4 processing days, with $31 million in gross revenue growth over those days compared to $61 million in growth for the entire month. Over those final days, there was a large jump in income tax withholding, individual income tax estimate payments, and corporate income tax estimate payments. On the other hand, sales tax revenue was quite negative at the end of the month and finished the month up a weak 0.8%. Turning to the situation year to date, over the first 6 months of the cash year, net revenue has increased 1.5% compared to the December Revenue Estimating Conference, or REC, estimate for the year of positive 1.8%. But as has been the case each month this fiscal year, this low level of growth is entirely the result of a cigarette tax allocation change enacted this past legislative session. If I recalculate that REC estimate without cigarette and tobacco tax revenue in the math, the estimated growth for the fiscal year adjusts to 3.9%. If I also calculate the year-to-date net general fund revenue growth rate without cigarette and tobacco tax, actual growth through December is about 5.3%. So ignoring the cigarette and tobacco tax deposit change, actual growth is almost 1.5 percentage points above projections. Let's now have a look at net receipts by month over the most recent 13 months. For the following charts, the underlying numbers have not been adjusted for any calendar or processing issues. Revenue increased months are colored blue, decreased months are red. With the December positive showing, net revenue has now posted 3 increases and 3 decreases over the past 6 months, but 2 of the decreases would have been increases without the cigarette deposit change. Personal income tax revenue is the most significant source of general fund revenue, and personal income tax revenue growth has been positive for each of the months this cash fiscal year, and the overall growth rate for that period is now a strong 5.3%. Personal income tax is now growing faster than it was at this point last year. Sales and use tax revenue has shown a similar pattern to the personal income tax, with 11 growth months in the past year. Despite the poor sales and use tax results this December, growth in this source is still a decent 3.1% for the fiscal year. Corporate tax deposits were significantly positive for the month. Corporate tax revenue has experienced a substantial turnaround starting May of 2011 and has increased almost 40% over that period. Corporate tax revenue has contributed substantially to the overall general fund dollar growth over the past 8 months. Growth for the month of December was a record $28.9 million, and the 3 biggest monthly dollar increases in corporate tax history have occurred over the last 8 months. Cigarette and tobacco tax are part of other taxes, and it is here that we see the impact of the tax allocation change, with significant declines shown July through December. The month of December is the 6th and final month that will show large declines in other taxes. Starting late December, all remaining cigarette and tobacco tax for this fiscal year will be deposited to the State General Fund. The Federal Bureau of Economic Analysis releases quarterly estimates of personal income tax for each state. Personal income includes income earned through employment, called wage and salary income, as well as personal farm and other business income, rent, interest, dividends, and government transfer income. Personal income does not include capital gains or income earned by corporations. For the following information, I focus on the wage and salary component of personal income and compare Iowa's growth experience with the experience of the U.S. This chart depicts the year-over-year growth in wage and salary income, computed quarterly for both the U.S. and Iowa. Iowa is in blue and the U.S. in red. The graph shows that heading into the recession of the early 2000s, Iowa wage and salary income growth significantly lagged the growth rate of the entire U.S., but the experience was considerably different throughout the most recent recession, and until the most recent 2 quarters, Iowa outperformed the U.S. during the recovery also. The last 2 quarters, ending June and September, show Iowa wage and salary growth percentages slightly below the U.S. rate of growth. While over the very long term, Iowa wage and salary income has not kept pace with the growth rate of the entire U.S., the growth over the most recent 10 years has been in Iowa's favor, with wage and salary growth for Iowa equal to 37.4% compared to growth of 34.6% for the nation. Ranking the annual growth rate of all states over the time frame yields this chart showing Iowa's rank computed quarterly. For the chart, a rank of 1 is the state with the fastest rate of growth in wage and salary income. For most of the 21 years depicted, Iowa ranked between 16th and 35th. Heading into and during the recession of the early 2000s, Iowa's ranking was at its lowest, reaching 46th at the end of 2000. Iowa recovered and reached a rank of 16 by mid-2004, but then slid down to 41 in 2007. Iowa's high ranking during and after the most recent recession has been the result of low and negative growth rates for Iowa being less low and less negative than the nation as a whole. The most recent 2 quarters break a string of 13 quarters where Iowa ranked 25th or better. To summarize, December 2011 was a record December on both a gross and net receipt basis. More than half of this growth was realized over the last 4 processing days of the month, indicating that perhaps some of the growth is earlier than normal deposit of income tax estimate payments. Corporate and individual income tax growth was significant for the month, but sales tax growth was very modest. While Iowa has been experiencing low and negative growth in wage and salary income since the start of the recent recession, just as the rest of the country has, Iowa's experience throughout the period has been much better than the U.S. average. The most recent quarter's data indicate that Iowa is now growing slightly below the national rate. The worrisome indicator from wage and salary growth analysis is that both Iowa and U.S. growth appear to have leveled off at around 3% to 3.5%, well below the historical good growth level of 5% to 6%. I appreciate your interest in Iowa General Fund revenue. Goodbye, have a great 2012, and I hope you check out the next monthly video memo in early February.